Hi there. If you are here, you have recently found a rabbit out in the wild that's young and most likely still needs to be nursed. I'm here to tell you about how it's the best idea in the world to find a rehabber within the next 4 to 5 hours. The sooner the better, because it is exceedingly difficult and heartbreaking. So I'm going to show you on one that is very, very typical in that he fights me to get fed. He had an animal wound that didn't seem like much to begin with, to the point where not just one, but two vets missed it. I caught it, and the only reason I knew it was there is because he started to get a little bit of gunk around his eye, which I recognize as conjunctivitis from my years of experience. Ended up being a huge abscess, and we've been going to the vet every day for over 2 weeks so that they could put gauze into the abscess hole and the next day pull it out, and I would have to sit in the car because of the screaming. It is not a fun pastime. So that in mind, this is Bee Wilde. I call him Parrot, but his technical name is Bee Wilde. Bee was found at a private school that had a lot of domesticated feral rabbits producing, and he was found beside the building covered in bees or wasps and looking pretty listless. And we took him in, and he had had one injury that was told just to keep clean with Bactine. So I did. But then I noticed the conjunctivitis, and I was wondering why the area hadn't been shaved, because that's very unusual to not shave an area if there's been a bite. And it turns out there were two wounds. The other one was missed because it was small to begin with, and it became infected and then abscessed. So he's doing so much better now. This is 3 weeks later. But that is the original hole in the shaved area. He's been getting antibiotics every day orally, as well as, against the vet's wishes, Metacam, a small drop of Metacam, because if rabbits get into pain, they stop eating. Their gut stops moving because they have to be constantly eating. If their gut stops moving, they get something called GI Stasis, which means that the mobility of their gut has stopped, and that usually is quickly followed by death. So the after effects of Metacam, which can be pretty harsh, or immediate death as a baby, I went with after effects that are possible. The lowest risk possible for this guy. So he's been very good with taking his antibiotics once he got the hang of it. He was fighting me to begin with. And now he likes that. He likes the flavor, and he loves taking his Metacam as well. You can see how hyperactive he is. So he is still on just a milk diet. He has access to food pellets, but doesn't like them. Hi. Get my hair out of the way there. Hi. So we're going to try nurse. And I'm just going to show you. I'm allergic to him, so... Yes, I'm allergic to bunnies, and I still take care of them. Yes, I'm crazy. He has decided to bite his normal nipple syringe in half. Don't know why. That was just his decision. So I have this backup. They do not work nearly as well. They're called miracle nipples. I don't like them. So how we start out. I have a little thingy, casserole dish that's tiny, whatever they're called, brain melted. And I had water in that. So with just the water in it, I microwaved it for 1:20. And then I have this little glass dish of milk that was cold from the fridge. Pop that in, and it gets to a nice temperature. And then I have my syringe. And I put the whole thing into a little container thing so I can easily carry it. Here is the syringe that we're up to. He's up to a 6 ml. He was at 3, but he's chugging those now, so we're down to a 6. And mix up the milk. Whenever he's hungry, he licks me, so that's what you're seeing. It's not so much kisses. He's not showing affection. He's hungry. So there's that syringe full. a really important thing, and I don't know if you can catch it on here. You can see, let me see your face. Let me see your face for 2 seconds. That's mostly skin. That's from milk dermatitis. So when he was super young, because I got him around 10 days, when he was super, super young, he would spit up the milk, which again, that's a huge difficulty because he has to eat, stay hydrated, and he refused. So it would dribble down his neck. And even though every single time with this cloth, I would moisten it in water, wipe everything off, dry it thoroughly, he still lost all of his hair. So that's milk dermatitis. It can get really bad. So the milk is still a little hot, so I'm going to let that cool off a bit. They like it about 95 degrees, and it's basically whatever is comfortable to your skin without being cold. So he likes it at about skin temperature. If I can barely feel the warmth, that's what he likes. If it's too cold, he won't eat it. He'll spit it up. If it's too hot, he'll spit it up. If I've had it for more than 2 days, which is the recommended, one time I just mixed some old stuff with the new, and he would not eat it. And whenever I did try to put it into his mouth, he would just go bloop, bloop, and it would just all come out. So you have to mix new milk. So he is fun. We're going to put it on pause while the milk cools down. So the milk's almost ready. Just thought I'd tell you a little bit about the milk process we have to do here. So we use Wambaroo. You cannot use cow's milk. You cannot use human breast milk. You cannot use goat's milk. KMR, which is kitten milk replacer, I basically use for hydration only. Even a can of KMR with 1 tablespoon of unwhipped, unsweetened whipping cream, that's for hydration only. Rabbits are one of the fastest growing mammals on the planet. The blue whale is up there with them. And their milk is so nutrient dense that it's very hard to replicate. The closest we've come so far is the Wambaroo, which is available from Australia. So just imagine how expensive that is to ship that in from Australia. We get it in powdered form in a 2 kilogram box, and it costs a huge amount. So if you want to donate, please do. It's vital to success of keeping these guys alive, because on the KMR, they are skinny, they are sickly looking, they don't look very great. Even the KMR with the whipping cream, which is what I use minimally. The Wambaroo does a lot better job. Another thing that's important is that rabbits can't pass gas, which means they cannot fart, flatulate, they can't burp. So when you're mixing up that milk, inevitably you get bubbles. You just do. What I use is something called Infanquil. It's basically a colic medication, like a liquid gas sex. You can get at most grocery stores. I put it in with the doctor's recommended amount, and it breaks up the bubbles before the babies even have it. And there's a little bit left over when they do have it in case they gulp. I had one baby that she would take a drop of milk at a time, and every time she would gulp, 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 and I could hear the air going into her gut. And without that gas X mixed into the milk, she would have had GI stasis and died easily. Just the way that she drank, and I couldn't get her to drink any other way. It was just, that was the way she would drink. It was very frustrating to know that if I didn't have that, I would be killing her by feeding her, you know? So it's a very scary thing. So the Wambaroo, the liquid gas X stuff, Infanquil, I can barely see it over there, the box. So we have that. The tip of nipples that I prefer against my face there, they have a nice, gorgeous, rounded tip, which is very important because that mimics the rabbit's natural nipple versus the miracle nipple, which is all over. You see how flat that, you see how flat that is? It's a very sharp angle, and I've tried to round them out, and the babies still don't like it. So we have that as our backup, which we'll see how this one will eat. What I also like about the longer nipple here is that I can get it, actually, perfect. Stay where you are. No, stay where you are. If I get it, you can see it goes almost to the back of their throat. Almost all, there's nothing in there. Hungry. Almost the back of their throat. So if I was to put it straight and just into the cheek a bit and push the cheek out a little bit, then all the milk dribbles down the side of their throat and it doesn't go straight into their trachea when they take a breath. So that's really, really important as well, because they get something called aspiration pneumonia, and it's very easy to give them aspiration pneumonia, especially if you have an old syringe. You know you've given them aspiration pneumonia when you can hear a light clicking, almost always fatal. So you have to get like antibiotics, and even then, by the time it's clicking, you're not in a good shape. That's the lungs being wet. It's hard. The amount of babies I've had, I usually get all of the babies. So ones like this that are pretty stable and could be eating grass and be okay, skinny but okay. I also get neonatals, so ones that are less than 24 hours old. Those are exceptionally difficult to get to feed and survive. They typically, most babies take a few days to get accustomed to the nipple and feeding off the nipple that's made of rubber or silicone rather than flesh. And they lose weight and they won't eat and they dehydrate a little bit. And then they bounce. They come right back and they start gaining weight like crazy. But initially they don't. So you get a neonatal that's already underweight. Perhaps a good-hearted Samaritan kept them for 24 hours trying to see if the mom would come back. Well, if it was a predator attack or they were on your porch somewhere, mom's not coming back. It's not happening. So they've just been starved for 24 hours, probably chilled. And I get them. And I look at these guys sometimes and I can see they have a 5, maybe 10% chance to survive. And I have to keep them warm and comfortable and fed as they die. And it happens very frequently, especially in the early and the late part of the year. Absolutely heartbreaking. I used to have a little graveyard for them, but ran out of space after a few years. You know, it happens. So the babies now, they get cremated. Most of the babies this year, I don't think I've lost one baby this year. One baby that came to me that was already on death's door on the way to me. And when I actually got it, it was DOA. So I guess I technically didn't lose that one, but I digress. It is incredibly difficult to keep those young ones alive. And sometimes they just don't want to eat. Like the one I talked about with the drip, drip, drip. I didn't think she'd survive because that's just so hard to keep fed. When they're super finicky, I try to reduce the amount of feedings because then they'll actually be hungry and want to eat rather than me forcing them to. Let's see if this milk's okay now because this guy's very hungry today. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Here you go. So what I'm going to do is go to the side of the mouth here and try to shoot to the back pocket of the cheek. You can see already he's fighting. He's hungry, but he's fighting. And already, because of how short this thing is, I try to shoot it in and just blast it out of his mouth. When it's longer, it's a lot easier. Oh my God, this thing's useless. Okay, we are going to try the one that he chewed in half already. There we go. So I get one of these nipples per baby. So I don't know if you can see how chomped up that is. And that's just from this baby as he grew his teeth. Let's try that. These ones screw right into the lower locks very easily. So it's a little awkward, but it's in there really well. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. See how difficult it is to get him to actually eat. So initial fight. Don't chew it. Don't chew it. And if he starts to sneeze, I need to suck that right out of his nose, because that's where the aspiration pneumonia comes in. You can see with this guy how much is getting all over his neck because he's not, don't chew it, not swallowing properly. Oh God. Sticky syringe. We're going to pause and try to get a different syringe. Okay, we are back. We have a 3 ml. And there'll be a little bit less going into his mouth each time. But it's going to take a lot longer to feed him, and he might think he's full before he actually is. So I'm just shooting the smallest possible amount into that pocket. You can see it's still draining out. And I'm not even pressing from here because you have no control. So what I'm doing is just with my thumb, edging it along. And it's just going down by about 1/4 of a cc at a time. And the same thing happens with the 1 ml syringes that I use with the teeny tiny babies. Just 1/4 of a cc at a time for the 3 ml, and even less, like 0.25, not even that. Teeny tiny amount per amount. And when it gets to the point where I have to press this, I try to go as slow as possible. And sometimes this guy will get into like a zone and just swallow over and over and over again rather than fight me, which is always a nice thing. Even now you can see he needs like 15 cc's for this meal. He's already fighting me. We're only like, what was that? 5 maybe I got into him so far. 3, and then whatever I got in from the last one. Come on. And we've been feeding now like this for like 2.5 weeks, I think. Going on 3 weeks. So it's not like this is new to him. The same habit over and over again, but pause for a bit. Oops, we're only half in, and he's already spitting it out. I don't know if you can tell that. Hold on. See all the wet around his lips? He's just spitting it out and not wanting to finish. I just dropped it on the ground, so I'm just going to rinse it in the hot water dish. There we go, and refill. But he's now getting to the point where he thinks he's full, but he hasn't actually had enough yet for this meal. And sometimes if you wiggle into their cheek, they'll swallow a bit, but yeah, he's coming to the end of his rope here. He's being very patient with me, but he does not. No, he's done. So all the milk that you can still see there is refusing to drink. So that's going to cause dermatitis. So what I'm going to do, take my cloth into the hot water that was heating the milk. his face. And he's used to this by now because we do it multiple times a day. I never cover his nose so he can keep on breathing. And now the dry. Okay. There's, whoops, one light. There's our chunky monkey. When I weigh him, I'm going to find that he's only actually put on about 5 cc's when I want him to put on 20. And that's what it's like with a difficult one. I would rate, if 10 was like supremely difficult, they won't eat, I would rate him about a 6. I've had an 8. An 8 out of 10 for difficult won't eat. And that was the drip by drip baby. So a drip by drip for 20 cc's. Imagine that. The patience. I got such bad neck pain. So what we're learning from this: 1, babies are cute. 2, if you want to be around cute babies, you can just volunteer at a rescue, volunteer, at a sanctuary. Just volunteer. You can be around them and not have to be responsible for their life or death decisions. When you give them fresh hay, they love you for it. So that's the thing we learned. 2, rabbits can't pass gas. So feeding them is actually quite dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. 3, if rabbits don't eat properly, they get something called GI Stasis and can die without giving much notice at all. Most people don't even recognize that the rabbit just died. 4, raising rabbits like this causes a lot of heartbreak. I talked about the death, but what I didn't talk about was giving them back to the rescue once they're old enough. So me personally, I try not to keep them past 4 weeks. At 4 weeks, their personalities really start to emerge, and I won't keep them past 4 weeks or I get attached, and then that really hurts giving them up. I consider myself a babysitter until then. They're just need to be socialized and eat and poop and sleep and be safe. So that's another thing too, that I was able to separate myself from the babies. But you know what? If you have kids, they won't be able to. It's going to be very, very difficult for them, and that's trauma they don't need. 5, don't try to keep them for 24 hours and see if mom comes back, because all you're doing is making it a lot flipping harder for the rescuers to let them survive. I think those are the major points. So I hope you enjoyed watching Bee Wilde get fed as much as we could. Looks like we're going to have some more feedings today, because I didn't have anything planned. Looks like I have to go cancel some things. And yeah, that's life as a rehabber rescuer. Have a good day, guys. Bye.